Okay, we've got a few more people coming in. Okay, I'm going to go into some housekeeping items and some introductions first to kick things off. And then as more people join, we'll kind of get into the meat of things here today. But I am Samantha Anderl, so co-founder of Harlow. And how we really coined Harlow is it's a home for freelancers. So Andrea Wilt, who's also here with me today, and I co-founded Harlow. Wow, I mix up my timeline these days, but I want to say around 3 years ago.
Yeah,
Around 3 years ago. Okay, I got my timeline right.
maybe four.
I know, see, exactly, right? I'm like post-COVID, but where since? So we've been building Harlow for 3 or 4 years now. And again, what we really say that Harlow is a home for freelancers. So there are a number of ways that we help freelancers solve their pain points. We have an all-in-one product, so an all-in-one tool that helps you manage your business. That's proposals and contracts, invoicing, client management, all of that. We have a newsletter that sends weekly that I know a lot of you are on, which is great. I hear from a lot of you often and kind of like response to that. That newsletter is really focused on helping tell our story, bring our community the right resources, and also to curate hot jobs for our crew. So on that same note, we also have a job board. So the job board drops new jobs daily. That's great for writers and marketers, designers, developers, project managers, people who work in social media. A great place to go out and see what companies are actively raising their hands and hiring freelancers. We also have our growth accelerator. So we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end of this presentation today. But our growth accelerator is really one-on-one support for freelancers. So what we heard along the way, a ton of people raising their hands, whether it's via DM or in our inbox, were people saying, "Hey, I love the resources that you're providing, but what I really need is tailored support to me." And so that's where the growth accelerator comes in. It's really one-on-one support to help you find clarity, break through your barriers, and go build that business that you really want to build. And outside of that, we also do events like this one. We have a ton of resources and really just try to find different ways to solve like very specific pain points for our crew. So that is Harlow in a nutshell. A few things about today. So we are going to go through the presentation today, but at the end, I'm going to really leave some time for Q&A. Andrea is going to help me run that. So if you have any questions as we go along, please drop them in the Q&A box. We'll get to as many as we can at the end. We should have plenty of time. And after the presentation, I'll go over this at the end too. But everybody will get the presentation that we go through today, the recording as well as the slides. You will also get all of the resources that we talk about and more information on Harlow, the Growth Accelerator, all of that. So we'll make sure that that's all nice and buttoned up for you and that you all have access to that. And Andrea, before we dive in, I'm going to let you just say hello and wave and do a quick intro.
Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone here. I'm Andrea, Samantha's co-founder, behind the scenes a little bit more so than Samantha is. But yeah, we're super excited to have everybody here today to talk about goal setting, accountability. And this is really, Samantha really developed this structure for herself. And it's been just hugely valuable for her, for me, as well as for our community. So excited to walk you guys through all the details.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to dive in. So, like we said, and like you all know, we're diving into goal setting and accountability today, right? And really, what I always come back to is like goal setting is a way for you to add intention to your life, right? And what we're going to talk about today is not only goal setting in your business, but goal setting in your personal life and really digging into the why of strategic planning, right? So, my history and my journey with goal setting has really looked different over the years. So, you know, 10, 12 years ago, I also confused that timeline. Andrea and I were actually in-house. We were running marketing for a company called Campaign Monitor. So we were more in an executive in-house role there. And we used this framework called the V2 Mom. And this framework was great for business planning, right? But at that time, I was young, I was ahead of marketing, we were planning for the business, but I honestly didn't do any personal life planning. And Andrea can attest to this. One of the reasons why we left that position was because our work-life balance got so out of whack, right? It was
Yes.
we were giving a lot to the business. We were meeting our goals. We were doing really great planning, but we weren't planning internally. And what happens a lot, and I'm going to get into this a little bit later too, is that when we don't plan intentionally, we start going down a path that we're not choosing. And for me, that's a lot what happened at Campaign Monitor. I was getting promotion after promotion. I was getting rewarded for spending a lot of time working. And so I thought that's what I wanted to do at the time. That's what I wanted it to look like. Turns out that's not exactly where I thrive. So fast forward a couple of years, and Andrea and I started building our own consulting business. So we left Campaign Monitor. We're like, hey, we're going to go out and found a mini agency, which is really just a fancy way of saying that we were freelancing, but together and with support, right? So when we started building our consulting business, we had in-person planning sessions, 1 to 2 times a year. We were building out our pricing and our model and reflecting on clients, but we were still missing some of the personal aspects, right? We knew that we left Campaign Monitor because we wanted better balance, but we weren't necessarily outlining exactly what that was and what it meant. There were multiple times, and again, Andrea can attest to this, where we were like, you know what? Let's take on that extra client. Let's take on those extra two clients. And all of a sudden, things are out of whack again, right? We saw that we were meeting our monetary goals, meeting our client goals, doing really good work, but our work-life balance was slipping again, right? Because we weren't intentional about what we wanted to do and why and sticking to that.
Or I will interject there.
Yeah.
We found that we were coming from this place of scarcity. And so we took on clients that weren't a good fit, that we knew from the beginning, like, oh, there are these little red flags, like, oh, but that's okay. We can sort that out. And then it just turned out to be a bad fit for us, which brought like negativity into like our personal lives as well and into the business. So that was kind of another thing that was going on of not being super intentional about the type of clients that we wanted.
100%. Even when we were intentional, like Andrea said, we would let it slip from time to time.
Yeah.
We're just, oh, this is good money. We're going to take it on. We're going to make it fit, right? And so we would stay it, but we wouldn't stick to it. And that's something that I'm going to dive into here too. Fast forward again a couple years later, and Andrea and I are building Harlow, right? So we are creating comprehensive business models. We're going out and raising funds for the business. We're building all of these strategic plans. But again, we were sort of missing, okay, what do we want this business to look like as part of our life, right? Because you get really wrapped up when you're launching something new and you get really excited about it and you want to build something big and you have all of this like excitement. But we sort of failed to outline what do we want this to look like as part of our overall life? What roles do we want to take? What do we find joy in? Not just the things that we will do and that we can do, but what do we want to do, right? Where does the energy come from? So, again, fast forward a couple more years, and today, Andrea and I are both running multiple businesses. We both, I consult, Andrea consults, we run Harlow. I have a coaching business. We both have investments and properties. And there's all these things going on in our world, right? And so a couple of years ago, when this is all happening, is when I decided that I really need to be better and more intentional at setting goals. And here's why, right? I mentioned this earlier, like along my journey, but what I found over and over again was that without aligning to the why, I would often end up on a path that was not intentional, right? So you can say, I want to make $200,000 this year. But why do you want to make that? What does it fuel? What does that enable you to do? What does that make you feel? Right? And so for me, it's really important that my life is intentional, and that's across the board, business, personal, and we'll get into my categories in a second on exactly how I align and make sure that I'm focusing on all aspects of my life. But, I really want to focus on the things that matter. And I don't want to always be caught up in, building this great big business if other parts of my life are suffering, right? If I can't maintain relationships, if I can't maintain my personal wellness, if I can't still have fun, right? So I want to be intentional and I want to do things for the right reasons. And I don't want to lose myself along the way. So when I really got into this and I decided that I wanted to set goals across my life, not just in business, I went out looking for the right structure or guidance. And I really honestly couldn't find it. I tried multiple things. I tried like goal journals and I tried other people's processes. And what I really realized is that I needed to create something for myself, my own system that was filling the void that I was going through. And here's why. Here's the problem with a lot of goal setting, right? What I found was that some of the frameworks that people were giving me were way too overwhelming and complex, right? Like I didn't even know where to start or how to start. Other goal setting, templates or frameworks, there weren't enough depth, right? So like I had a journal, but there wasn't enough depth. There wasn't a place where I could really like write it down and make it really meaningful. A lot of goal setting tactics or frameworks or templates were either for business or my personal life and didn't fit both. A lot of them didn't guide me through regular accountability and reflection, how I should come back to these goals, right? I don't want to set my goals once and forget them, right? Like I want to keep coming back to this. I want to make sure that I am aligned fully and that I'm sticking to this path that I've outlined for myself. And a lot of these frameworks and templates also didn't have a system for course correction. So here's what I built. It's a simple but powerful system that works really well for me. Obviously, you being here, I'm going to share it with you and hope that for some of you, it might be the right fit for you too. And what I love about this system is that it's simple enough that it's not overwhelming. I give you a very specific starting point that guides you through how to start thinking at the highest level and then bring that down into depth and detail, right? So, how this works, and again, I'll send over these like exact templates and frameworks so you can see them and have them in your hands. But you start with a deep reflection on the previous year, right? So I typically start this in December or very early January, and I start thinking about my past year, the good, the bad, the ugly, the meaningful, the things that I want to leave, the things that I want to keep. And I start there. Then I create a guiding word and phrase for myself, right? So what do I really want this year to feel like? What do I want it to look like? How can I break that down into a simple word, 2 words, 3 words, and then a guiding phrase that everything can level back up into? Then I decide on the life categories that I want to build goals for. After I create all of this, and this is not something that all of you have to do, but it is something that I do because it keeps me accountable, is I actually publish and I share publicly. You don't need to do that. You can. We'll talk about the kind of why and why nots in a minute. And then I have regular check-ins and course corrections. So I check in monthly, and then I also do a really big H1 deep dive. So we're going to dive into each part of this a little bit more. First step, deep reflection, right? So every year I sit down and I guide myself through these questions. So, what did I love about last year? What brought me joy? What made you feel good? What did you struggle with? What decisions did you make that had positive impacts on your life? What decisions steered you off course? What do I want to take with me from that past year? And what am I ready to let go of? And this all sounds simple, but it's very introspective, right? And it's leading our brain in multiple ways of kind of assessing and figuring out what worked for us and what didn't. And I put an example here. This is just from my 2024 reflection, being super transparent. At the beginning of this past year, January 2025, I looked back and I said, okay, I committed too hard to other people's plans. I let people guide me on how I spent my energy and time. And that means that I was not staying true to my own needs and desires at time. I want to change that, right? Another reflection I had is that I opened up to some of the wrong people with the wrong expectations, right? So that was something that I wanted to change and shift going into the following year. And then also relying too heavily on others for financial success and business decision making. I wanted to just gain some more independence and confidence in the decisions that I was making. And just jotting these things down and being really, really honest with yourself helps you open up what you want things to look like. So this is where it all starts. Then we move into creating your guiding framework. Okay. So this is something that every single year, it takes me a minute to sit down and really figure out what I want the next year to look like, right? And what I do a lot of the times is I play around with words. I write something down and I'm like, That's not quite it. I write something else down. That's not quite it. And then I start to just figure out what is really resonating with me and sort of start making like lists, cross it off, lists, cross it off. So my 2025 example is manifestation and self-empowerment. So my guiding phrase for this year, because I really wanted to open up expansively and tell myself and be confident in the fact that I could build and create whatever success that I wanted to. So my phrase was, if I want it, I can make it happen. I'm in my charge of my success physically, mentally, and financially. So for me, that was, you saw my reflection in 2024 where I said, I relied on other people too much. I went with the flow too much. You know, I was focusing here when I wasn't focusing on my own needs and desires. And so in 2025, I flipped that and I said, I am in charge and I am in control, and that's what I'm letting guide me. So what this really becomes is your North Star, right? So every decision and goal that you create should align and roll up into this guiding principle. Then we start breaking things down into categories, right? So I choose these categories. These categories are not for everyone. You can create whatever categories you want. But when I look at my life, I think of first, personal wellness, right? So my mental and physical health and how I'm going to support that through goal setting. Secondly, I think about my relationships, right? So my relationships with friends and families and business partners and whoever else my support system is, I think about what I want that relationship to look like and feel like. Then I go into money and Harlow, right? So for money, what do I want to reach this year? What is my income goal? How am I going to get there? What goals align to that? Do I want to make any certain investments? Then I go into specifically planning for Harlow. So when Andrew and I think about Harlow, every year we think about what are the things that we want to launch? What are the ways that we want to continue helping people? What are the new ways that we want to help people, right? So this is just a way to really break down into what are the things that we truly want to accomplish for this business and why. And then fun. So I am a big believer. I know Andrea is a big believer as well. We are work life, I know work life balance can sometimes have a negative connotation because a lot of people think that you can't find it. But I'm a big believer, like, I'm not living my life just to work. I'm living my life and I'm working to create environments in which I can have fun and I can take care of myself and I can take care of the people around me, right? So fun is a big bucket for me. I set goals around travel. I set goals around going to new concerts. I set goals around like new experiences. A ton of things here, right? And again, I'll share all my goals with you so you have them and it's very tangible. Your categories might look a little different than mine, right? Maybe it's fitness specific, maybe it's health, maybe it's career, maybe it's family specific. Maybe you have a category around learning and growth, travel. There are a lot of different ways to break this down. It's really how you view your life and the various aspects of it. So then we go into the meat here, right? Which is the creation process. So once we've reflected on our previous year, once we've established that guiding phrase and our guiding words, once we've decided which categories we want to goal set in, then we go to actually creating those goals, right? So what I tell people a lot of times here is that these are typically not set in one setting for me. I'm not sitting down at my computer and creating, four goals across five categories and one and done, bam, here we go. This again is like a reflection period, right? So what I typically do is I get everything down on paper and then I start refining it and I add more specifics, right? I will do my first draft and then I will step back and I will reflect and say, is that really what I'm trying to accomplish? Why? Does that really roll up into my guiding phrase and words? I'm essentially like gut checking myself and making sure that I am creating the right goals to really guide me over the next year. And then when I really go in, I do a final pass where I make sure that everything is very meaningful and actionable. So, what I mean by that, when I go through my goals, I want to make sure that there is a way that I can measure things. And measuring isn't always numbers, it's not always data. A lot of the times for me, it's feelings, right? If I'm creating relationship goals, I say, okay, how am I going to reflect back on that and assess whether I'm meeting that goal or not, right? Some things like, I want to go to three new concert artists this year. That's very measurable, right? I know that I can come back after my half year or my year one and say, okay, did I complete that or not? But what I really want it to be is meaningful and actionable and make it so that I can truly reflect and measure how I'm doing against my goals. And then what I do, and again, not everybody has to do this, and it's not the right path for everybody, and that's okay. But I share my goals publicly. And I do that for a couple of different reasons. One, my own accountability. So when I'm stating a goal publicly and I'm putting it out there, I feel like I have another system of accountability to make sure that I'm working towards my goals. The second reason that I share specifically is for inspiration. So I mentioned this earlier, Andrea and I, a lot of our goal around Harlow is to help our freelance and self-employed community. And so by sharing these goals, I'm hoping that I'm also inspiring other people to set their goals and move with intention, right? And so those are the two reasons why I share my goals publicly. Again, I find it to be very powerful, but it's optional. And then we get into staying accountable, right? So goal setting is one thing. Creating that phrase, creating those goals, defining your life categories, really getting into it. That is all great. And I've done this in the past. I've done goal setting in the past where I set it and I forget it, right? And I come back to maybe this list that I made at the beginning of the year, or maybe I went to like a retreat and I made this list and I don't come back to it often enough to like understand whether I'm still aligned, whether it's still intentional, whether it's still the right path for me. And so a big part of this process is staying accountable. And I do that through two ways. The first is a monthly check-in. So this for me is a quick review of progress. So I view this as like this is 20 or 30 minutes a month where I am going back and looking at the goals that I set and I'm saying, okay, am I still aligned? Then I'm saying, okay, if I'm still aligned, but I'm not meeting my goals, what are the blockers? Why am I not meeting those goals? Right? And then I say, okay, if I'm not meeting those goals and these are the blockers that I identified, what tactics or strategies or meetings or people do I need to reach out to get back aligned and back committed to my goals? And the other thing that's really important here is this gives me also an opportunity to celebrate my wins. So if a lot of you follow me on social, you will notice that I celebrate my wins a lot and I talk about them openly and transparently and proudly. Because when I'm working hard to meet my goals and going along my intentional life path and things are going well and I am doing a good job, I am going to talk about it. And I think it's so important for us, especially as freelancers and self-employed people. A lot of times when we don't have like a big support system around us, it is so important to celebrate your wins. This can be online, it can be with your partner, your friends, your family. It can be just for you. Treat yourself. Go get a cake pop, get a special drink, go buy yourself something, whatever it is, like reward yourself for meeting your goals and for following this and even doing this in the first place. So that's a monthly check-in, and that's the purpose of it, right? Stay attached, stay committed, identify blockers, celebrate yourself. And then we go into the mid-year deep dive. So I do this every July or August, and this is a more comprehensive approach, right? So I go through all of my categories and I really dig into the details. Am I meeting this? Am I not? Why? And I'm writing it down. I go through a financial check-in. I look at all of my bank statements. I look through how much revenue Harlow's made. I look through how much revenue I've made. I look through what I'm spending. I look through how I'm supporting other people, right? I go through my relationships around me and I'm making assessments. Am I being as supportive as I wanted to be? Am I doing this? Am I doing this? If not, why? And then I go into course correction, right? So if there are things that I'm not meeting, and here's an example. I did my H1 reflection about 3 weeks ago now. And what I saw is that I was pacing to 80% of my revenue goal. And so that means that I'm going to miss it by about 20%. So what I did at that moment was said, okay, what things are scaling right now? Where can I put in more effort? What is the outcome of that effort? Let me build a plan for how I'm going to get there. The other thing that you could do at this moment is say, hey, I'm pacing to 80% of my goal, but it still feels really good, right? So we can also adjust and course correct, right? So I always say, this is not only like a, hey, let me build a plan to make sure I meet every goal super specifically. It is a realignment and then a course correct, right? So if you set a goal that you're no longer aligned to 6 months ago, I'm not telling you that you have to stay committed to it. And no matter what, you need to do X, Y, and Z to get there, right? We can go through some introspection and say, that goal is not right for me anymore. My life shifted, my priorities shifted. We can adapt our goals accordingly. And that's why by doing this monthly check-in and by doing this H1, this mid-year deep dive, that's how this stays a living, breathing document that works with you and adapts with you as you move and push forward. And that's why this is so important. So again, it's one, definitely about staying accountable, but two, also about just checking in with yourself and making sure that you're still aligned and still moving with that intentionality that we talked about, right? So one big thing here that I want to call out is that goal setting is for me, first and foremost, right? It is a way for me to move with intention. It is a way for me to clearly clarify and build the life and the lifestyle, the businesses, the relationships that I really want. But secondarily, I also use these goals a number of different ways, right? So, a few examples here. Level setting with my coach. I kicked off with a new coach in January, and you know what I did? I started our conversation by saying, here are my 2025 goals, very specifically across my life. You can see exactly what I'm trying to accomplish. Now let's have a conversation about how you can help me get there, right? Financial planning. I have a financial planner, and every single year I say, hey, I sat down and I made my goals. Here are my revenue targets. Here are the investments that I want to make. Here are the financial goals that I want to accomplish. How can you help me get there? Let's talk about it. Team alignment. Andrea and I, every single year, I'm like, Andrea, I filled out my goals. Here they are. Here's where my head's at. And it's a way for her and I to align. And she can understand my priorities and what I'm trying to accomplish, both in our shared businesses, my own businesses, and across my life, right? If you have a business partner or a team that supports you, letting those people like very transparently know where you are and what kind of lifestyle and business you want to build is so important. And I will say, I think Andrea and I are very good at this. We're very transparent and honest with one another. And this is just a way to even further enable that, right? And even outside of that, so those are like the people that I'm sharing this with for ongoing alignment, right? But it also helps me with my decision making and my strategic planning. So if I'm making decisions throughout the year, I can come back to this and say, is this the right opportunity for me based on what I outlined here? Is this the right commitment for me to make based on what I outlined here? When it comes down to business decisions and resource allocation, I can say, okay, this is what I said I wanted to accomplish. I know that I can't do that on my own. Who do I need to bring on to make that a reality? Right? So it also helps me with business decisions and resource allocation. So I know that I brought you through a lot of information there. And it's funny that I start out and say it's a very simple framework. Yeah, I spent 30 minutes talking about how I go through the framework, why it's important, what it looks like. But here's the part where it gets tangible, right? So after this presentation today, what I'm going to share with you is three things for free resources, right? The first is the blank goal planning template. So you can have it and you can use it if you want to when you start creating your goals. The second thing I'm going to share with you is my 2024 reflections and my 2025 goals. So you can see at the beginning of the year in January when I sat down what I outlined and how I went through the process and system, right? A lot of times, like a blank framework can be a little bit scary, but if you can see how someone else responded to it and filled it out, you can have more inspiration, right? So I'm going to share that with you. What I'm also going to share with you is my mid-year reflection. So, like I said, 3 weeks ago, I went through, I identified where I was in relationship to all of my goals, which goals I still cared about, which goals I said, you know what, that's actually not in alignment with me anymore. I'm going to let that go, and how I was going to course correct. So, I will also share that with you so you can view my reflection process. One thing that I want to call out here, and I know a lot of people struggle with this because I do a ton of coaching and a ton of consulting, and sometimes it's hard to start, right? It's hard to step up and find that clarity and figure out what you actually want to accomplish, what you want your business to look like, what you want your life to look like, and why. And so, another thing that we offer, and I mentioned this earlier as well, but it's that one-on-one coaching, right? So, specific to this, it's really a 3-month program. We sit down with you and we say, okay, let's map this out together. Let's go through this process together. Let's define what you're trying to build, why, find clarity around it, and then let's build all of the supporting plans for you to help you get there, right? Think of it as sort of like your boot camp or your 3-month catalyst to really throw you into intentionality and get you on this path, right? So with that, there's lots of like regular check-ins and guidance and helping you build plans and really just kind of acting as like your BFF or your business partner, right? It's a lot of thought sparring and just making sure that you have the support you need to build that intentional life, to build that intentional business, and to make sure that you're creating something that really has longevity to it, right? So one of the things that Andrea and I talk about a lot is like sustainability and longevity, right? So when we are creating, whether it's relationships or businesses, whatever it is, making that stick long term and making it sustainable is different than just getting like the courage and momentum to launch it, right? That's where intentionality comes in. If you want to create something long term, if you want to stay on this like intentional path, if you want to get from point A to point Z and stay in it, that's when you really have to be intentional, find the right path, and make sure you're doing things in a way that doesn't burn you out and where it feels like to you like you're on a very specific path that you can stick with and commit to and feel really good about. So, with that, I'm going to turn things over to questions and discussions. So, if you have any questions about goal setting challenges, how to make this system work for you, more questions on how I set my goals and what that looks like, we're here to answer them. So, what do we have here? Andrea, I see that you've been answering things as we go a little bit. A lot of people are asking if they'll get the replay, which they will, which is great. Okay, what does H1 stand for? First half of the year. Excellent. Um, let's see, what else do we have here? Well, I'm so glad a lot of you are like, can I please get this recording so that I can be really intentional with how I set these goals and come back to that? And I love that. Um, Okay, another question here. Okay, this is pretty fantastic as a way of setting goals, which is different from most others. Exactly, which is why I created it because I couldn't find something else that worked for me. Do you do a quarterly or annual review? Yes. So I mentioned my monthly reviews. Those kind of act as my quarterly reviews. So I'm diving in every single month and I'm doing a quick assessment to make sure that I am aligned to my goals and then reassessing where I want to go. And then every year I do that H1 deep dive and I do an end of the year deep dive, which I actually didn't mention here. So this is a good question. So it really is monthly check-ins, it's a mid-year check-in, and then it is an end of the year check-in. And that end of the year check-in typically acts as my catalyst for going into my next goal setting, right? So I will go back and say, okay, this is what I wanted to accomplish in my fun category. Where did I end up? How many trips did I go on? How many concerts did I go to? How many new countries did I see? Or this was my revenue goal. How close to it did I get? And what did that look like and why? So, very, very important. Monthly check-in, mid-year check-in, annual check-in. Okay, next question here. Love the idea of thought sparring with a partner. How did you come up with that concept? I don't know that I came up with that concept, so I can't take credit for that. But one of the things I think earlier this year, and I would say probably in January when I started going out and seeking my own coach and somebody to help me along the way, is I knew that I wanted someone who I could bounce ideas off of, right? And who really acted as my support system and was as invested in my success as I was. And one of the things that I really needed is, hey, I come up with a lot of concepts. I come up with a lot of things that I want to build or that I want to do. But I don't think I should be creating those things in isolation because I know, and I know a lot of us know that creating things in isolation gives us limited perspective, right? You can be brilliant and you can be a visionary and you can have so much going for you, but we have inherent biases, we have limited perspectives. And so finding a partner, and for me, again, that was my business coach. Well, and also, I mean, Andrea has been my thought sparring partner for years and years and years now. But finding that in my business coach specifically was just a way to bring in more perspective from somebody that I admired and that I trusted and that I knew could make my business better. And I will say, Andrea and I talk all the time. We are co-founders, and so we are constantly thought sparring and brainstorming. And both of us, I'll come in and say, hey, my business partner gave this feedback on this thing, or my coach gave this feedback on this thing, and she'll be like, that's such a good idea. We should do that, right? Or she'll be like, hey, I was talking to my therapist about wanting to do X, Y, and Z, and they gave me this feedback. And I'll say, that's a great idea. So even outside of Andrea and I thought sparring with one another, having outside support brings us even more shared perspective. Andrea, I really wanted to
Absolutely.
chime in.
I really do
I saw the
because,
excitement. Yeah.
well, I mean, Samantha and I have been working together. I couldn't even tell you how long it's been now, right? So
Don't
we
get me
like,
going on timelines. I don't know.
yeah, we deeply
10 plus
know
years.
each other. And it's the same with like our partners, right? When I bounce feedback off of bounce things off of my partner, sometimes it's nice just to have somebody that doesn't know you, doesn't know, the inner dynamics of your relationships, your relationship with freelancing, your relationship with business, with money, things like that, to
Yeah.
help give you a fresh perspective. And so I think that is a huge positive about having an external resource, whether it's whoever it is, to
Yes.
help support you as you're kind of thinking about what you want your goals to look like.
They challenge you in a different way.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the times, in Andrea and I will this Andrea and I will say this about one another, right? It's like I support Andrea so wholeheartedly and she supports me so wholeheartedly that sometimes we're not maybe challenging each other the way that we should,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm like, well, Andrea, I just want things to look however you want them to look.
Whatever you want to
And
do.
I want to support you and what that looks like for you. But my business coach might come to me and say, why? Why are you doing that? Like, I'm not just going to, I'm gonna challenge you. I'm gonna make you think about things differently. I'm not like, yes, I'm your support system, but I'm also your challenger. I'm also trying to make you better, right? And it's just a different type of
Yeah.
relationship. Okay, next question here. I'd love to know what your coaching process and pricing is, perhaps better offline. I'm going to include that all in the follow-up so you have it super tangibly. What I will say is that there are two options in how you work with us on coaching. One option is a single session, right? So if you have like a very specific thing that you want to work through, say you want to figure out like your pricing or you want to figure out your positioning, we can do a single session and work through as much as we can in that 45-minute session. It comes with like a very actionable follow-up. So I give you my recommended next steps, etc. The most popular way that we work with people, and because a lot of what I'm covering here, right, is like long-term and longevity and sustainability, is really more ongoing retainer-based coaching. And what that looks like is 2 to 3 sessions a month, ongoing email and Slack support, um, content review, feedback, building plans together, like really more so acting as like your business partner and your support system and your best friend as you're going through this. And so I will send over in a more detailed, concise way that information along with pricing for both options. Okay, let's see this. Okay. I like this as not only a business alignment, but life aligned, which is really the point of freelancing. Yes, 1000%. That is that is really why I went searching for a different structure and ended up creating this structure is because I wanted it to be expansive of both my life and my business. Because my business is not my life. And while I am very motivated, I find a lot of joy in my business, especially now because a lot of my business and what I do is really getting to like help people and watch their businesses grow and watch them excel. I find a ton of joy in it. I do, but that's not my entire life, right? And so when I think about what I want to accomplish and really what I want it to look like, I need it to be expansive. I want my relationships to be healthy. I want to be having fun. I want to feel mentally and physically healthy while I'm building, while I'm creating, while I'm doing all these things. Okay, another question about coaching. I will send all of that over afterwards. I will make sure that everyone has like all of the information on coaching, the links to go to. And also, if you have any specific questions about coaching and working with us after this, please feel free to respond to the email. I'm happy to have a one-on-one conversation with you, right? You don't just need to like click a link and go in and purchase and get information for yourself. Like I am here to talk you through it. So please feel free to do that and use me as a resource. Um, okay, another kind of like question statement here. So someone said the challenge that I find for myself is not limiting myself. And I love that. I will say that was a big theme for me this past year. That's why my words were manifestation and self-empowerment, because I had to get into the mindset of if I want to achieve this thing, I can. I can, for me, and I sort of hate this phrase, but I'm still going to use it. Sorry. But I always tell myself, like, I can have it all. Because to me, having it all is having everything that I deem important. And sometimes you don't have it all at one time. Maybe that's not within a day or even a week, right? But what I can do is I can create a plan and create goals and create a strategy to have all of the things that I find important and make sure that I'm doing that. And if I'm ever out of whack, I can come back and realign, right? And I think when it comes to not limiting yourself, honestly, sometimes that comes by getting motivation and empowerment from other people, right? Sometimes when you're operating kind of in this like limited belief system, if you're feeling this like scarcity mindset, or you can't understand how you can get to that next level or how you could build something, up here, sometimes you just need somebody to like encourage you and tell you that yes, you can, right? I will say, another example here from Andrea and I's 40,000 years of working together. Um, when we first left our corporate job, right? So Andrea was a CMO and I was the head of marketing. We both left within around 3 months of one another, and we were talking about going out and building this consulting business. And originally, what we said is, hey, we want to go out and build this consulting business because we want better work-life balance. We were in meetings from 7 to 7. It was really draining. All the business was going through all these structural changes, and we didn't want that. So initially we said, okay, our goal is to go out and create this thing where we make the same amount of money that we were making in-house, but have better control of our calendars, right? So we went out and did that. But then at one point, we had this conversation, and I feel like we really had to kind of like build each other up and give each other like this empowerment and motivation where we were like, I think we can build something really big here. I think we can build this bigger and maintain this lifestyle. But we had one another to do that, right? Like we built a consulting business that was pulling in $1 million a year, right? When we first went out to start our consulting business, that was not our goal. That is not where we thought we were going to be. But we figured out over time how to not limit ourselves and how to shoot higher and how to make an actionable plan to get there, right? Because it's one thing you create a goal, but it's another thing to create that action plan to get there. And Andrea, I feel like you wanted to say something. I saw your mute button go on and off.
Yeah. Well, because somebody just typed in a question that's super related here about like,
Yeah.
okay, well, it's like you got to make money,
Yeah.
right? So how do you get from here to there, which I think is a great question. It took us years, right? At the beginning, we took every project. We took bad projects.
Yeah.
And then we once we had built up the relationships, we had a very strong referral network. We had built a really strong network at that point in time. Once we had more confidence, frankly, from having like actually gone out and said, okay, yes, we can freelance, we can get clients. We were able to slowly start to transform and find the right clients. So it's not like this all happened overnight. It happened over the course of years.
Yes. And I will say a good way to set goals, because you're right. You don't leave an in-house role and go into a corporate environment and say, I'm going to make $500,000 or I'm going to make $1 million. And again, also a lot of people don't want to make that much money. So don't use us as like an example of like where you have to go monetarily. But if you do have larger, more aspirational revenue goals, and that's where you want to go, I suggest building stepping stones to get there. And that's what I do with my own coach. So when I talk about the amount of money that I want to make, I typically think about it in terms of like monthly revenue that I'm building in. And I build a system where I say, okay, if I'm setting a goal on January 1, by month 3, I want to be to this much monthly revenue. What do I need to do in those 3 months to get there? Then by month 6, I want to be to this next tier, this next stepping stone of monthly revenue. What do I need to do over those 3 months to get there? Right. So nothing is a act today, see impact tomorrow. Some things, maybe, right? You can book a trip today, check that off tomorrow. But a lot of times you have to think about things in stepping stones and how you're going to actually build and create the plan to get there. And so that, like, don't let that be discouraging. If this is your day 1 of freelancing or this is your year 3 of freelancing and you haven't done this and you want to and you want to figure it out, now is the right time to start. And then you can absolutely create stepping stones to be there, right?
Yeah, and the stepping stones might look something like, you know what? I'm no longer going to take clients that I know in the initial meeting there's a red flag, right?
Yes,
That can be
boundaries.
that can be a choice, right?
Mhm.
So they can be these really small kind of micro decisions that build on each other that help you get from point A, which you're just starting out. And
Yeah.
for me, I I tend to operate from a place of like financial starvation where it's like, oh my gosh, I need to
We're
take
always
every
trying to pull
client.
Andrea out of, yes.
Yeah. There might not be another client, right? Those types of small little decisions can help you change that mindset.
Yeah. Did you say like a micro? What was the word
Yeah.
you used?
I can't remember now. I'll have to go back, but micro decisions, maybe.
Well, it's recorded, so if you're listening, you'll find that word. But I like the way that you phrase that, right? That like not every goal has to be this like giant, and you'll see when I send out my goals that not every goal is this like giant, life-changing, life-altering place that I'm trying to get. Sometimes it's just like a reminder to me, right? Like the example that you used, Andrea, was like, hey, I'm not going to take any more clients that give me red flags or that I don't enjoy working with.
Yeah.
It
I
is
was
a goal to bring you joy, and joy is so important to like the longevity and sustainability. And that's why we need like those like higher level, more aspirational goals, along with the gut checks and the reminders of, hey, we're going to get there without losing these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Like one of my goals right now is it's going to sound really silly, but it is not to take client meetings before 9 a.m. I have a little one at home,
You know
like
that.
it's chaotic in the morning, but I have a tendency to always want to please clients. And oh, they need help. I'm going to be helpful. I'm going to rearrange my schedule for them. So a small little thing like that, which helps me to then achieve my goal of feeling like I have some balance and some agency.
1000%. And that's another really great example of like a micro goal. Just
Yeah.
implementing small things
Tiny things.
in your schedule, your life that drastically change how it feels though, right?
Yeah.
I love that. And Andrea, I've always been a 10 to 4 meeting girl. And Actually, no, I do. I typically do no meetings on Mondays and 10 to 4s on other days, and actually no Friday afternoon meetings. So I'm very protective of my calendar. And I love when Andrea gets protective of her calendar. Um, okay, another question here. Do you handwrite everything, journal, keep a file on your computer? How do you organize all this? So I put everything on my computer because that's what's easiest for me. I type everything up. I use this template, I type it up, I publish it on the Harlow blog. That's where it lives. So it's just like Google Docs and the Harlow blog for me. Um, but another thing that I do that I didn't actually talk about here is I set micro intentions daily in a journal, and I might actually I have it. So I also use this journal. It's a wellness journal. If any of you want like the exact journal, I can send it to you. But I also, it's called One Day at a Time, and I set my daily intentions here, which do line up to those bigger intentions. That's just a way for me to like get to my computer in the morning and write down what I want my day to look like and feel like. And this is not just for business, it's called a wellness journal. So I write down how I want the day to feel. I write down how much sleep that I got. I write down what my like wellness activity for the day is going to be, what my active activity for the day is going to be. And it's a good way for me to commit daily to like staying aligned and staying true to those intentions. Um, okay, let's see here. Okay, there's another question here that says, other than hiring a coach, how do you find a business or creative partner to bounce ideas around and collaborate? So if you are not in the place to hire a coach or it's not something that you're interested in, reach out to your network, right? Like I will say, Andrea and I, at a lot of different phases of our life, we have reached out to our network for feedback on a number of things. And here's what I will say about the way to do that. When you tap into your network and you reach out to the people around you, make sure it's a give and take, right? If we want like inspiration or we want feedback on something, when you go out and ask for that from somebody, make sure that you're offering them something in return, right? Because I know, and Andrea knows, we've gone through this a lot where we've asked for recommendations or favors or introductions or feedback from our network. Most of the time, people are happy to provide that, right? They are happy to do that for you if you ask and offer a favor in return. So I would say the other way is definitely creating that supportive network outside of your own network. Because what I hear a lot is that a lot of people don't have maybe a very expansive network that they can tap into. There are a ton of communities out there, right? A ton of really great communities that, depending on what you're looking for, I don't know if I can make recommendations right now without knowing any direction that you're trying to go. But there are a ton of online communities, whether they are Slack or forums or whatever it is, where there are like-minded people gathered with the intention to help and support one another. So
We
if you're,
actually have a blog post that lists a bunch of communities. Maybe we could send that out in the follow-up also. Again, it kind of depends like what you're looking for, what community would be a fit.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, maybe I'll gather some of the like broader communities that I've experienced and that other people have talked about
Yeah.
recently and send those up in the follow-up. I think that would be super helpful. Okay, let's see. Okay, Andrea, you were talking about this, like how do you make the transition from whatever comes your way towards
Yeah.
the base you want? That's a good one. Okay, reverse engineering goals, create stepping stones. Yes, I'm glad you like that approach. I think that is the way to like really make it attainable. Because that's and even before I finished reading your sentence, you literally said makes it attainable, which is great. We're aligned. But yes, when you're going through this, and again, that's what I'm gonna send out my goals so you can see them and so you can see that not everything is this big aspirational meaty life-changing goal. Some of them are just really small things and reminders about what I want to live and what I want it to feel like. And like your goals should be a mixture between macro goals and micro goals, right? Like what you're really trying to accomplish high level and what you want things to look like, but then the smaller things that you're going to do to make that happen and make that feel good. Let's see. Oh, I love this question, or I love this comment that came in, Andrea, for you specifically. It said, the people
Wow.
pleasing is so hard. I love that that's a part of your goals, and I'll be adding it to mine.
It is really hard.
Yeah.
I have a hard time sticking to it too. I'm not gonna lie.
That is true. I do remind Andrea a lot. We were actually, you know what, Andrea and I were just having a conversation that came from my coach recently, where we were talking about the fact that a lot of high achieving women or people in general feel like they need to over deliver and provide so much value to inherently feel valuable, right? And that's a cycle that I know I'm trying to break, and that's a cycle that Andrea is trying to break. Is we when you run your own business and you provide a service, whatever it is, you are adding a lot of value, right? You are filling a gap in that person's business or life and helping them move, their life or business forward. And there is so much value in that. And we need to like understand the value that we're bringing. And we don't have to over deliver. We don't have to jump on the 7 a.m. meeting, right? Like, again, this is where intentionality comes in. If we don't want to do those things, we do not have to, right? And this is something that I say to a lot of my coaching clients is, and a lot of my coaching clients, again, are people that are like either freelancers, consultants, they're self-employed, they're building small businesses. And what I tell them is you're in control. And I know sometimes it doesn't feel that way, right? But that's where intentionality comes in. You are in control of outlining and defining what you want to do, what it looks like, how it makes you feel, who you're going to work with, when you're going to work, all of these things, that is up to you to decide. And sometimes it can feel like we're not in control. And like Andrea said, like we just have to take everything that comes our way and we're in this scarcity mindset. But the way you get out of that is by defining it. There's one way to hop off that train, right? Like you don't want to feel like the car is driving you. You want to feel like you're driving the car. And the way to do that is for you to define the path that you're taking. Okay, we're about at time here. These so many questions. These have been so good. One quick question. Do you use a Substack? I do not use a Substack. Not because I have anything against Substack. I think Substack is great. But we send the newsletter out. It's through Beehive, and then you can find us super active on LinkedIn, Twitter, X, Instagram, and I will send out also all of those social profiles afterwards. And if anyone doesn't have the link to our newsletter, I will also add that to our follow-up so that you can jump on the list. Okay, Andrea, any last minute notes that you want to chime in? We're at 10:59 right now,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna let everyone go on time. But anything else you want to add here?
I don't think so. This has been super fun.
Awesome.
Let's do it again at the end of the year.
Yes, actually, that's a great note. I did have a couple people reach out and ask how often we were going to do these, and I do think we want to do them twice a year so that we can talk about goal setting. This can serve as your inspiration. We can work through things and questions together. All of that. We want to be a resource here for you. So great. Like I said, we will send out all of those resources after and make sure you have everything you need. If you have additional questions around goal setting or coaching or how to leverage your network, how to stop people pleasing. If you want Andrea and I, feel free to respond to that email. We are here and we really want to be a resource for you. So awesome. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.